Good morning, wonderful listeners. Welcome back to Growing Up Congolese. Thank you so much for clicking. Thank you so much for being here. I'm excited for this episode. I'm excited to see what y'all would think because I've been wanting to do this episode for a while, and so let's get into it. Before anything, let me just tell you the background of how this episode came about, right? So we are in an election season, and there's Biden and there's Trump, and Trump is still gaining a lot of support, and people are wondering why. He's a convicted felon, he's this, he's that, why are people still rooting for him? And to quote Trevor Noah, if you remember his first episode of The Daily Show, he was talking about how Trump is an African president. I remember the last line was well, America had its first African-American president in Obama. They're about to have their first African president in Trump, right? And then you guys have to Google that bit. It was really funny. And I remember when I was watching that, I was like, oh my God, Trump makes a lot of sense. And even when he got the election, a lot of Africans, especially when I was traveling, and then I would meet Africans and they'd be like, oh, I like Trump. Now, they were not saying it that they like him as a person. I think for the rest of the world, Trump is the perfect punishment that America deserves. So, because Trump literally gave America no standing ground to point its finger at other countries. So they kind of liked the fact that, America was being punished by its own person and everything. So, but I remember when Trevor Noah made that joke, I used to be like, yes, Trump does remind me of an African president. Trump, the phenomenon of Trump, of his followers, reminds me of sort of this double dutch that a lot of African people have to do when it comes to politics, right? And then it reminded me of my own native country's politics, and specifically of one man, and his name is Mobutu Sese Seko. And in this episode, and I pray to God that if you're listening to this, you are not thinking that I'm defending a person, but I'm trying to present a different analysis of how people think, right? Because I feel like when we talk about African strong men, people don't understand there is a background to them. There's a context to them. There's a reason why, some people, especially in the Congolese community, they'd be like, oh my God, we need Mobutu back. Mind you, he's dead, so you cannot have him back. But some people will complain and be like, oh my God, if Mobutu was still president, or if Mobutu, why did we get rid of Mobutu? Why did we listen to the West to get rid of Mobutu and everything, right? There's this sort of in French we call pleur, there's this cry for his leadership style, because some Congolese, they feel under Mobutu they had more value. Under Mobutu they were seen. Under Mobutu they were respected. The country was respected. You respected a Congolese person under Mobutu. And me as a child growing up in a Congolese household, learning Mobutu from a very Congolese perspective of this man was he was for the country. He was, he created this ambiance of authenticity, which we're going to talk about. He was very he was bringing the Congo back to its glory. And from the Western perspective, when you hear Mobutu, well, he's a dictator. He corrupted his country. He stole from his country. And then, so when you have those two analyses, you're like, okay, is Mobutu a hero or a villain, right? And one thing that we say in political science, and one thing I learned in one of my political science classes is one's meant terrorist is another's meant freedom fighter, right? You may label somebody a terrorist and everything, but it's for you, he's a terrorist, but for somebody else, he's a freedom fighter. So how do we understand those two positionality, right? So that's what we're going to talk about today. and I'm going to use Mobutu as a background. Like, I'm going to use him as a context, right? One of the things that annoys me about Western perspective is like they say things without understanding context, right? When we look at Mobutu's reign, Mobutu got in power in 1965. So 5 years after the Congo gained its independence from Belgium. You have to understand that a country who comes from being treated badly for years and decades and centuries, right? Used as a private property for the Belgian king, pumped a lot of money into another country. Like, people were called macaque, which means monkey. You were less than, you were literally dust. You were dust. Women who had babies with white men, the babies were taken from them. They were put in Belgium. Some of them never had contact with their kids and everything. So you were literally treated like you did not even deserve to be human. Like you should be grateful that you are being of service to us because your existence doesn't even matter, right? So that's where the Congolese like history, or if you want to talk about Mobutu's idea to revamp Congo's identity, you have to understand that background. You have to understand that you are coming out of being mistreated. You are coming like out of being like slaves in your own land. You're a slave in your own land. It's different when you're a slave in a foreign land, but you're a slave in your own land. You are not what's the word? It's like somebody coming to your house and beating you inside your house and telling you you're not worth it in your, like, let me use this example. Girls, you know when you have your life figured out, you have your own home, you have your own job, you're paying your own bills and everything, and then some good nothing man come to your house and is degrading you in your house, you know? And mind you, you are the one that's giving him a ride to work. You are the one that's giving him like money and everything, but he's degrading you in your house. Do you see the type of disrespect that is? Do you see the level of disrespect that is, right? So the Congo have been disrespected for a long time. Congolese people felt disrespected for a long time. And one of the reasons, if you listen to Congolese people speaking, one of the reasons why they loved Mobutu was because this man was like, we are not slaves. We are, like, his attitude was like, we will show people that the Congo should be respected. He redefined what the Congolese identity was going to be from what it was prior to when he came into power, right? So the funny thing about Mobutu was he was in the Belgian, well, we have to call it like the Belgian like army, because at that time when he was a soldier, he, like, Belgium was still, you know, ruling like in the Congo. And then some people say that he always had ambitions, you know, to kind of like trick Belgium, to know their tactics so that he can rebel against them. And then some people will be like, oh no, he's an opportunist, you know, so he saw that Belgium was losing power, so that's why he became on Congolese side, because the man is shady, right? The man has done a lot of shady things. But from a scientist perspective, and so from somebody who understands behavior, you can understand both sides of like, listen, we are in this place, let me try to survive, right? Let me play both sides, right? So Mobutu get into power, he starts this, but when he gets into power, he had a lot of issues where there were regions of the Congo that wanted to be their own countries, right? And to combat that, he really came with this idea of nationalism that did not encompass like tribalism, right? So there's this famous quote that is like, Papa Bomoko, Mama Bomoko. So we are all from one father, we're all from one mother, right? And this idea, although it does have its advantage, right? Because the colonizers, when they came, they divided you, like they used the tactics of divide to conquer, right? So some groups were being treated better, where others were not, like in the case of Rwanda, right? So a lot of times, like they use very, like, they saw division in order for colonization to work, right? This idea of saying that, listen, we are not going to be Luba, we're not going to be Swahili, we're not going to be Ngala, we're not going to be Bakongo, we're going to be Congolese, in order to unify the country, it had some merit, right? Because if you want to, like, you can, like, a house divided against itself will not stand. But on the other hand, a lot of cultures are very different. I am Luba and I am Swahili. Those two cultures are not the same. They don't have a lot of similarities. They are not the same thing, right? So the regions that wanted to annex himself, of course, the Luba wanted to annex themselves because, Luba don't take nothing from anybody, right? So he started this idea of, like, listen, we're going to have this patriotic, country where we are going to understand that we are from one father and from one mother. One thing that he would do is, like, if you were, let's say, if you were like a governor from the south, he will bring you to the north, right? And then if you are from the north, he will bring you to the south. If you're from the east, he brings you to the west. If you bring from the west, he brings you, like, so he wanted to just have, like, a mixing, so that there won't be this idea of, like, oh, I'm Luba or I'm Swahili. No, so we can just, like, let's mix, let's have a mixage, right? Let's have, like, so a Swahili person can have a family, like, can move to the Ngala person, work there, have that culture and everything. So in one sense it worked, because, like, there's a lot of people who are, like, they may be Bakongo, but then they grew up in the Kasai region, so they have, like, a sense of belonging to that place as well, so they did their homemaking in that region. So it's like, if the United States was, like, like the Congo and everything, and then so the president would choose, like, who goes where and stuff like that. Like, people from the north goes to Texas, to like Alabama and everything. So that kind of, like, when you come back, you kind of not feel like, oh, those people are, like, from that region, but there's this sense of unity because there's been a lot of mixing, right? So you can have a father who's Luba and a mom who's, like, Ngala. Or you can have a Ngala father, and because before, Congolese culture were very strict about marrying into your own culture, because they were like, listen, trying to marry into somebody's culture, especially with our customs and everything, is going to take them a while to adapt and everything. So Luba people married Luba, Bakongo married Bakongo, Ngala married Ngala, Swahili married Swahili. So that it won't take too much time for the person who's not in your tribe to accommodate to your custom, because back then people were very strict on the customs and everything. Like, for example, Luba people are like patriarchal, right? But Bakongo are more like on the woman's side. For example, my ex was a Mukongo. If we have children, our children will be more on my side, right? Our children will be more on my side, so they won't belong to him, they will belong to the mother. So his sister's kids, because those are his sister's kids and everything, his sister kids belong to him more than our own children will belong to him. So in his culture, as an uncle to his sister kids, he would do more things for his nieces and nephew than he would do for our children that we have together, because in their culture, the kids belong to the mother. But in the Luba culture, the kids belong to the father, right? I am both Swahili and Luba. My mother is Swahili, my father is Luba. But because I have a Luba father, when somebody asks me for my heritage, culturally, I only have to say the Luba side. Now, I say I'm Swahili Luba because in our house, we grew up more as Swahili, and my father was one of those, he comes from those Luba family who was, who migrated to the Swahili region. So he knows more about the Swahili region than he knows about the Luba culture, right? Because that's, his family speaks Swahili. He doesn't speak the Luba language well. Like if he speaks it now, I don't know, because I don't have a relationship with him. But when we used to talk, he and my mother spoke in Swahili, right? So that's why I can say that I am Swahili Luba, but culturally I have to say no, I'm Luba, because being a daughter of a Luba man automatically takes away me being Swahili. The same thing with my mother. My mother is born, so my mother has a Luba mom, but a Swahili father. But because also that culture is also the kids belong to the father, if you ask my mom her ethnicity, she'll just say oh no, I'm Swahili. She will not count the fact that she's of a Luba's mother, So different cultures have different things. So a lot of times people did not want to mix and stuff like that, because they just felt for me and my ex, if we had children, it will annoy me if he's not doing anything for my children, for our kids that we have together, but his nieces and nephews take precedent over my kids. That will annoy me, So that's just an example of how the cultural difference that can sow division and stuff like that. So that's why a lot of people were not marrying outside of their own tribes. But when Mobutu came with this idea of no, we are all Congolese and everything, and he started moving people around and stuff like that, people started mixing, right? And you needed to bring that unity so that to combat that division that existed for years and years and years and years, right? And then so he had that, and then he also had this idea of authenticité. Authenticity just means authenticity, right? What is authenticity to an African person, right? Most of us, we have Christian names. We have either Christian name or Islamic name and stuff like that, right? Which are not rooted in our culture. So Mobutu's name is Joseph Désiré Mobutu, right? He took it off. He's my name is now Mobutu Sese Seko Wazabanga Kukubenge, right? So there was this thing of we need to bring back the pride in being Congolese. Why do we have Christian names? Why do we have European names, right? Why do we have why are we favoring European names in our country? Right? So the power in the name, and I remember I have an episode of the power of the name, because in African culture, your name is your family's wishes upon you, right? So for me, my name is Ndaya. Ndaya means of greatness, to be great, something like that, right? It's your parents' wish for you and everything, right? So there's a tradition in giving people names, right? I think about my kids' name all the time, because I'm just listen, what do I want to give my kids? What do I want to give, what heritage I want to leave my kids with, right? So that's what names are for African cultures. I'm not naming my kid after the soccer player. That's not happening. First of all, you name your kids after soccer player, your family's going to curse you. Your family, we do not have because in Congolese, some African cultures are like that, but I know for sure in Congolese culture, you're oh yeah, let me name my kids Apple. Apple? You're going to name me after the grandfather, the grandma, and everything. So we like to pass down names, especially if your parents were they had influence and everything. So it's a wish, right? It's a cultural, you bless the child with the name that you give him. Now, let me open a parenthesis. Some of the new Congolese names are crazy. They are so crazy. They mix different Bible verses and then they create a name. Those are just the new age parents, but in traditional Congolese culture, you're supposed to give your child a name that you're supposed to give him a wish, right? So his idea of authenticity was why are we speaking French? So he would do a lot of his sermon in Lingala, because people understand Lingala, right? Why am I giving a State of the Union in the colonizer's language? right? Why is my name, well, why am I taking pride in a name that's like, that has like no cultural value to me, right? So in a lot of me, so for example, my name is Ndaya Cynthia, and one of the reasons why my name is like, like I have to have that white name, quote unquote white name, is because like there's a lot of Ndayas in my family. So there's like Ndaya this, Ndaya that, and everything. So if you just say Ndaya, we're all gonna look at you. So you need to specify which Ndaya you're talking to, right? So we have used our Christian name to kind of like decipher between like different people. Like on my mother's side of family, there's a lot of Mianda. So if you just come, if they're all sitting down and then you're just like Mianda, everyone's gonna look at, like all the Miandas are gonna look at you. You need to be like, okay, which Mianda? Funny story. So my cousin died 5 years ago, and then my brother texts me and he's like, "Oh, Lola died." Now a regular person will start crying and be like, right? And then, but my family, because there's a lot of Lola, I'm like, which Lola? So I should know whether it's a Lola that I like so I can cry, or the Lola I don't like so that I don't cry, right? So yeah, so that's how we now use like, the European name to decipher between each other, because culturally a lot of us are named after an aunt, we're named after a grandma and stuff like that. So yeah, so this idea of authenticity was like, we need to bring pride to the Congolese culture, we need to bring pride to the Congolese identity, we need to bring pride to the Congolese name and stuff like that, right? And under Mobutu, he had like social, like for example, musicians could not sing the dumb stuff that they sing today. Because as a musician, like as an artist and stuff like that, you were supposed to be like educating the mass, right? And again, you have to understand that we are coming from being treated as crap. We are coming from people treating us as if we don't have brains, as if we're not smart enough, as if we're not capable of enough, right? So people who were like artists or singers, like he didn't want them to make the colonizers right. Like, I don't know if that makes sense, right? Like in African culture, it's very, because if I act a fool, I am a representation of my parents. So I am embarrassing my parents if I act a fool, right? Because like if I'm acting a fool, they'll be like, oh yeah, sa maman ne l'a pas bien élevée. Her mother did not raise her right, right? So whatever you are going to show publicly had to reflect like elegance. It had to reflect grandeur. It had to reflect that you're civilized, but civilized not in the white way, but in the Congolese way, because it's like he wanted us to show that, Congolese, we can be able to be singers without being clowns, without being like, in cages. We can be like artists. We can showcase our art without you putting us into cages and watching us as if we're zoo animals and everything. So whenever singers would kind of like sing profanity, they will go to jail. They will. No, that's not funny, but that's how crazy, like that's where he was, he was a strong man, right? But he was like, you are not going to embarrass me in front of these damn people. Like, and like sometimes I feel this way, because when I was in school and I'm taking like a political science class and it has to do with Africa, I will go in on white people. I will be yelling. I'll be telling them how everything is their fault and everything. So one time there was a class, and then this kid said that, oh yeah, Africa needs to just be colonized again, but without the punishment. I went in on the guy. I told him how we were capable, we're this, we're that, and everything. And then as we walk out, I don't know if y'all remember the video of like Ugandan parliament fighting in Uganda. And then I've never been so embarrassed in my life. You just negated everything I told these people, like, so that's what Mobutu was doing, right? Because he was like, you are not going to embarrass me in front of these people when I told them, like, we can run our own country. And then so he was trying to run a country under the background of like, thinking like because people did not think that black people can run their own country, they can run their own government, blah, 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 blah. So there's a context of that, right? And now, fast forward to today, a lot of Congolese mourn Mobutu because they feel like the things that is happening in the Congo will not happen under Mobutu. They feel like their pride has lessened, right? There's a lot of profanity. You have girls dating fathers. You have like little girls dating fathers. There's no more civility, right? Congolese people are very they're very evil towards one another. The way they use the internet is very crass, it's very profane and everything. And then people just like, you think somebody would come to, if Mobutu was alive, did you really think that somebody would literally come on TikTok and do half of the thing Congolese people do on TikTok? You know, so you have the older generation who's very like ashamed of being like, this will not happen under Mobutu, this will not happen under this will not happen under that, you know. But before I finish this episode, let me talk about the corruption. And again, I am not defending the corruption. I am really not. But I find it rich when the West blames the African leader for being corrupted when he corrupted Africa. One of the things that African leadership suffer from is that we still suffer from the impact of colonization, right? We still suffer from this patriarchal colonization thing, right? When you have shown the people that as a leader, you're supposed to take from them, you're supposed to corrupt them, you're not supposed to treat them fairly, you're not supposed to be amicable to the people who are below you. You mistreated them. You treated them like crap. You treated them like slaves and everything. You stole. You enrich yourself like from their work and gave them nothing to show for. You created this idea of like, when you come into power, you're supposed to steal from the country. That's the example that a lot of African leaders had from the colonizer leadership. That's what you showed that leadership should be. So it's very funny how like, now that we've kicked you out and now you no longer can, they still steal from us, right? But now that you no longer have like your hands like on the pie, now you're like, oh yeah, he's a dictator, he's starving his people. Fool, you were starving the people. Of course, it's awful when your own is killing you, right? It's very awful when like, your own betrays you, right? Like from the perspective of Congolese, like you being a Congolese, you know better than to mistreat us the way the white colonizer treat us, right? So understand that argument. Like I respect that argument when it comes from Congolese people, but I do not respect that argument, or I don't value that argument when it comes from the West, when you have done the same thing. And let's be honest, Mobutu stayed as long as he stayed because he was backed up by the United States. So you backed up a dictator, and you back him up for your own self-benefit. So when he refused to be used by you, then the narrative is always like, oh yeah, he's a dictator, he starved his people, he did this, and he did. I am not defending this man. He did do that. But I just find it rich coming from the West because like you backed him up. And let's be honest, they backed him up because they didn't want Mobutu to be like on the side of Russia during the Cold War, right? Because Congo is still a big power, right? We just have poor leadership. With the right leadership and people not thinking that you come into government to enrich yourself, Congo will be a superpower. We are the richest country in natural resources. All those cell phones, the electric cars and everything, the materials is coming from the Congo. So with proper leadership, with reset in mindset, Congo can't stand against any Western government. But I just find it rich when people are just like, it's the same thing with Fidel Castro. Yes, I understand the oppression and everything, but like I feel like sometimes America likes to tell Fidel Castro's story from the middle. What was happening in the beginning, right? What regime was in Cuba in the beginning? The people that fled Cuba, for most part, they were the people who were well off. Now, I'm not saying socialism is a great thing. Listen, I've lived in France. I did not like the system. I do not support the system. Like I don't support it to its entirety. I do not. Like I have cousins who have never been to work, but they just stay home just to collect social services. Like I am not paying my taxes for your stupid ass, Like so I don't like I'm not defending the socialistic aspect or the communist aspect or stuff like that. No, that's not what I'm saying. But I'm just saying I feel like with a lot of developing leaders, we usually, especially the West, we like to tell the stories from the middle. So we would call Mobutu a dictator, which he was. I'm not going to say, listen, this man, first of all, football, for my American listeners, soccer, you cannot lose at home. You lost at home, a foreign team beats you in the Congo, the whole team was sleeping in jail. That's not funny, but like I'm laughing because it's ridiculous of him, right? The team was sleeping in jail. Like I always make jokes about like, when I go to watch like a sporting event and then like a team lose, I'll be like, so when are they going to jail, right? It's a joke that I make, like, and if you're African, you'll understand the joke and everything. But yeah, we could not lose at home. Let's lose in a foreign country, but you cannot lose at home. That's a type of embarrassment that nobody wants. You do not lose at home. And the same reason I can understand why some Congolese people mourn Mobutu is how I can understand why, even though Trump is doing outrageous things, people still support him, because he's giving people who felt unheard confidence in themselves. So regardless of how many times you tell them that he's corrupt, he's been bankrupt and everything, like when you feel like you lost your identity, when you feel like you lost your power, like you are not seen, regardless of what somebody can tell you about this leader, you don't care. Because regardless whether he's corrupt or not, he saw you and he brought you out of the hole that you used to be from. So therefore I ask, now that we gave all this analysis, I ask, was Mobutu a villain or a hero? My answer to that is, one's man terrorist is another's man freedom fighter. Thank you so much for listening. I hope you enjoyed this. I can't wait to hear your comments. So yeah, bye-bye.